"Excuse me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, cutting through the heavy silence of the room. "What are you doing in our house?" My uncle, a man named Marcus, looked at me with that condescending smile that always made my skin crawl. "Our house? Elara, sweetheart, you're just a kid. You can't possibly think you can maintain a place this size, not with 3 growing boys and no income." "This is our family home," I repeated, my voice firm despite the tremor I felt inside. "My father left it to us." "Did he?" My Aunt Clara chimed in, her voice dripping with a fake saccharine sweetness that was more poisonous than any venom. "Because we've been looking through his papers, dear, and we simply don't see any will or official documentation that says that." My heart sank like a stone in water. In all the chaos of grieving, of planning 2 funerals in 3 months, of trying to hold my younger brothers together, I'd never once thought that any human being could be this heartless. To throw 4 orphaned children out of the only home they had ever known during the darkest moment of their lives. 3 days. They gave us 3 days to pack up our entire lives and leave. My name is Elara Vance, and I am the woman I am today because of what happened next. This is the story of how my own family tried to destroy us, and how we survived to claim what was rightfully ours. I'm 32 now, sitting in my office on the top floor of a skyscraper overlooking downtown Chicago. But when I close my eyes, I can still smell the damp, musty odor of that basement apartment where I raised my 3 half-brothers after our world fell apart. People always ask me how I did it, how I kept us all together when everything seemed so hopeless. The truth is, I almost didn't. There were nights I cried myself to sleep on a lumpy mattress, my stomach aching with hunger, wondering if we'd even make it to the next month. But I had made a promise to those boys, and I have never broken a promise in my life. Let me start from the beginning. My father, Richard Vance, passed away from a sudden, massive heart attack. He was only 45, strong as an old oak tree one day and gone the next. Dad had always been my hero, a man who had worked his way up from nothing, a brilliant engineer who loved his family with a fierce protective passion, and who taught me that integrity was the only currency worth more than gold. My biological mother, Eleanor, had passed away from a brutal fight with cancer when I was very young. I barely remember her, just flashes of a gentle smile and the scent of lavender. But Dad kept her memory alive for me through stories and old photographs. 2 years after Mom died, Dad married Isabella, a sweet, kind woman who never tried to replace my mother, but who loved me as if I were her own blood. Isabella gave our quiet house life again, and she gave me 3 incredible brothers, Liam, Noah, and little Caleb. Liam was 15 when Dad died. He was quiet, thoughtful, and carried a sense of responsibility far beyond his years. Noah was 13, a firecracker of energy, full of jokes and a laughter that could light up the darkest room. And Caleb was only 11, still my baby brother in every way that mattered, sensitive and kind, with the biggest, most compassionate heart you've ever seen. Isabella was utterly devastated when Dad passed away. She loved him with every fiber of her being, and watching her grieve was like watching a beautiful flower slowly wither away. 3 months after Dad's funeral, Isabella died in her sleep. The doctor called it congestive heart failure, but I knew the truth. She had died of a broken heart. In the span of just 3 months, I went from being a 19-year-old college sophomore with dreams of becoming a teacher to being the sole guardian of 3 grieving, terrified boys. But even then, I wasn't prepared for the evil that was to come next. The day after Isabella's funeral, my uncle Marcus showed up at our house with his wife, my Aunt Clara, and their daughter, my cousin Sophia. Marcus was Dad's older brother, a man I'd never trusted, even as a child. There was a cold, calculating look in his eyes, a flicker of resentment that always appeared whenever he looked at our family's modest, hard-won success. "Elara, honey," Aunt Clara said with that fake sweetness, her eyes scanning our living room not with sympathy, but with an appraising, greedy glint. "We need to talk about the house and the boy's future." I was exhausted, drained by a grief so profound it felt physical, but something in their manner put me on high alert. "What do you mean?" Uncle Marcus cleared his throat, a self-important sound. "Well, your father, bless his soul, didn't leave a will, and this house has a mortgage that needs to be paid. The boys need proper guardians, Elara, adults who can provide for them." "I can provide for them," I said firmly, my voice stronger than I felt. "This is our home. My father left it to us." "You're 19 years old," Sophia, my cousin, interrupted with a cruel smirk. She was the same age as me, but seemed a decade older in her cynicism. "Your Uncle Raymond never discussed official guardianship with us," Marcus continued, ignoring my protest. "But we are family. We will take the boys in. You, of course, can visit whenever you like." My blood ran cold. "Take them." The words echoed in my head. "I'm making custody adjustments here." I fixed my gaze directly at him, blindingly. That's when my other uncle, David, appeared. He was Dad's youngest brother, always the quiet one, lurking in the background of family gatherings. But there was something dangerous about his silence, a predatory stillness. He'd been going through Dad's papers in the study while we were talking. "There's no will," he announced, his voice flat and final. "No life insurance policy either, just debts. A lot of them." I knew that was a lie. Dad was meticulous about finances. He was always talking about making sure we were protected, about the policies and investments he had set up for our future. I remember just a year ago, he sat me down and showed me a thick, leather-bound folder. "Everything you and the boys will ever need is in here, Elara. If anything ever happens to me, you make sure you get this." But when I asked to see the papers Uncle David was holding, Uncle Marcus became aggressive. "We are trying to help you, Elara. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The next morning, they returned with a man they introduced as Mr. Harrison, a lawyer I'd never seen before. He had a stack of official-looking documents that supposedly proved Dad had died intestate, without a will. According to these papers, as the eldest surviving male relatives, my uncles had the legal right to make all decisions regarding the minor children. "This is wrong," I kept saying, my voice shaking with a mixture of grief and fury. "My father had a will. He showed it to me." Mr. Harrison barely looked at me, his expression of bored dismissal. "I'm sorry, Miss Vance, but there is no official record of any will. The estate is, for all intents and purposes, worthless. Just a collection of debts and this heavily mortgaged house." Within a week, they had used those fraudulent documents to legally remove my brothers from my custody. Within 2 weeks, they had sold our beautiful family home to pay what they claimed were Dad's overwhelming debts. I was given 3 days to pack up our entire lives' worth of belongings and find somewhere else to live. They told the boys they were coming to live in a big house with their cousins and that I would be able to visit. But I knew better. I knew this was a severing. The night before we had to leave, I gathered Liam, Noah, and Caleb in what used to be our living room, now a hollow, echoing space filled with a few sad-looking boxes. I took a deep breath and looked into their terrified eyes. "Listen," I said, my voice low but steady. "Listen to me. I don't know exactly what is happening or why they are doing this, but I promise you this. We are going to be okay. I am going to take care of you, no matter what. Even if I have to miss meals, you boys will never, ever go to bed hungry. We will be together again, I promise." Liam, trying to be strong at 15, his face a stoic mask, hiding his fear, just nodded. "We know, Elara. We trust you." Noah, who was usually the joker, was uncharacteristically quiet. "Are we really poor now?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't have much money. I admitted, the truth a bitter pill to swallow. But we have each other, and that is what matters. Caleb, my sweet, sensitive Caleb, crawled into my lap, something he hadn't done in months. "I want Dad back," he sobbed into my shoulder. "I know, baby, I know. But Dad loved us more than anything, and wherever he is, he wants us to take care of each other. Can you help me do that?" He nodded against my shoulder, and in that moment, I made a silent, sacred promise to my father's memory. I would not let his children suffer. Whatever it took, however long it took, I would keep us together. We moved into a damp, dark basement apartment in a rough part of East Atlanta that I found through a desperate Craigslist search. The rent was $800 a month, a sum that seemed as impossible as climbing Everest on my part-time retail salary, but it was all I could find that would take us. The apartment had low, oppressive ceilings and one small, grimy window that barely let in a sliver of gray light. The landlord, a kind, elderly woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, saw the desperation in my eyes and let us move in with only a partial deposit. That first night in the basement, I lay awake on my thin mattress, listening to the sound of my brothers breathing in their shared, cramped bedroom. I had exactly $347 in my checking account, 3 growing boys to feed, and absolutely no idea how I was going to make it work, but I was determined to try. The next week, I officially dropped out of Georgia State University. I took the small amount of tuition money I got back and used it to pay the rest of the deposit and buy groceries. Then I started working 3 jobs. In the mornings, from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., I cleaned offices downtown for $12 an hour. In the afternoons and early evenings, I worked as a waitress at a greasy spoon diner called Sonny's Kitchen for $8 an hour, plus whatever tips I could earn. On evenings and weekends, I babysat for wealthy families in Buckhead, who paid well and, thankfully, didn't ask too many questions about my situation. The boys had to change schools, a traumatic transfer from their nice, safe suburban district to inner-city schools that were overcrowded, underfunded, and tough. I watched them struggle to adjust, saw how they tried so hard not to complain about their new, harsh reality. Liam, my brave Liam, stepped up in ways that both amazed me and broke my heart. He started doing the grocery shopping on his way home from school and would often have dinner started by the time I got home from the diner. He helped Noah and Caleb with their homework and made sure they did their chores. At 15, he was more of a man than most adults I knew. Noah used humor as a shield, cracking jokes even when we were eating ramen noodles for the 4th night in a row. "Hey, Elara," he'd say with a grin, "you think if we eat enough of these, we'll turn into noodles ourselves? I could be Spaghetti Noah." He made us laugh when all I wanted to do was cry. Caleb had the hardest time adjusting. He had been the baby of the family, protected and pampered, and suddenly we were in a daily struggle just to keep the lights on. He started having terrible nightmares and would often climb into my bed in the middle of the night, his small body trembling as he whispered, "Are we going to be okay, Elara?" "We're going to be just fine," I'd whisper back, stroking his hair, even though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. By our 2nd year in that basement, I had developed a grueling, relentless system that kept us afloat, but just barely. I worked approximately 70 hours a week, slept maybe 5 hours a night, and lived on a steady diet of cheap coffee and sheer, stubborn determination. But the boys were thriving, a testament to their incredible resilience. Liam, against all odds, was maintaining a 3.8 GPA. Noah had made the varsity basketball team as a sophomore, and Caleb had joined the school choir, his beautiful voice a source of light in our dark little apartment. But the stress was killing me. One particularly difficult night in December, I came home from my 3rd job, my body aching, to find our apartment dark and cold. The electricity had been shut off. I'd been 3 days late on the payment, and despite my pleading, desperate phone calls, the power company had cut us off. I sat in my beat-up car outside our apartment building and cried until I couldn't breathe. I had exactly $23 in my bank account, rent was due in 5 days, the boys all needed new winter coats, Caleb had been coughing for a week, a deep, rattling cough, and I was terrified he needed to see a doctor. But we had lost our health insurance when I dropped out of school.
For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I actually considered calling Uncle Marcus. Maybe they had been right. Maybe the boys would be better off with adults who could actually provide for them. But then I remembered the cold, calculating look in their eyes, the speed and efficiency with which they had dismantled our lives. Something was fundamentally wrong about that entire situation, and my gut instinct screamed at me that my brothers were not safe with those people. I dried my tears, went inside, and lit every candle I could find. When the boys asked about the power, I forced a smile and turned it into an adventure. "We're camping tonight, indoor camping. Who wants to tell ghost stories?" We all huddled together on the lumpy couch under every blanket we owned, and for a few hours, it actually felt like we were a real family again. Noah told ridiculous jokes, Liam read to us from an old novel by candlelight, and Caleb fell asleep in my lap, his breathing still a little ragged. That night, long after they were asleep, I started a journal. I wrote down everything I could remember about my father's finances, every detail of the meetings with my uncles and that sham of a lawyer, Mr. Harrison. I documented the strange, suspicious speed with which our lives had been dismantled. I didn't know why I was writing it all down, but some deep, primal instinct told me that I might need this information someday. The boys and I developed our own traditions, our own secret language of survival. Sunday mornings were pancake mornings. No matter how tight money was, I always made sure we had the ingredients for pancakes. It was our one guaranteed luxury, a small act of normalcy in a life that was anything but. When Liam turned 16, I couldn't afford a car or even a big party, but I saved up for months to buy him a beautiful vintage watch from a pawn shop. "Every Vance man needs a good watch," I told him, echoing something Dad used to say. Liam cried when he opened it. Not because it was expensive, but because he knew what it meant. He knew the sacrifices I had made to get it for him. "Elara," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you don't have to do things like this. We understand." "I'm your brother," I interrupted, my own voice shaky. "You deserve nice things. You all deserve the world." Noah's 16th birthday was different. He had been talking for weeks about wanting to take a girl he liked to the movies, but he was embarrassed that he didn't have any money or decent clothes. I worked extra shifts for 2 solid weeks and bought him a new shirt and took him shopping for the perfect cologne. "You look so handsome," I told him as he got ready for his date. "Dad would be so proud." "Thanks, Mom," he said, then immediately caught himself, his face flushing. Elara, sorry." "It's okay," I said, though my throat closed up with a wave of emotion so powerful it almost knocked me over. "It's okay." Caleb was different from his brothers, artistic and deeply sensitive with a beautiful, angelic singing voice. When he was 14, his choir teacher told me he had a rare natural talent and should seriously consider private voice lessons. I couldn't afford professional lessons, but through sheer determination, I found a retired opera singer who taught out of her home and was willing to barter. I cleaned her house entirely, top to bottom, twice a week, in exchange for Caleb's lessons. The first time I heard him perform at a school concert, singing a solo that made the entire auditorium go completely silent, I cried right there in the audience, silent tears of pride and love streaming down my face. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had become like a grandmother to us, squeezed my hand. "You have raised good, strong boys, Elara," she whispered. "I'm trying," I whispered back. By the time I was 23, we had been living in survival mode for 4 long years. I was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix, running on a dangerous combination of caffeine and stubborn determination. But the boys were doing remarkably well. Liam was a senior, with scholarship offers from several top colleges. Noah was a star on the basketball team, and Caleb was winning regional singing competitions. But I was falling apart. I had developed chronic migraines from the constant stress and lack of sleep. I had lost a dangerous amount of weight because I often gave my own small portions of food to the boys. I hadn't been on a single date or had any semblance of a social life since we had moved into that basement. My entire existence revolved around work and keeping my brothers safe, fed, and hopeful. One night, I collapsed at the diner. I was carrying a heavy tray of food, and one moment I was walking, and the next everything went black. I woke up in the emergency room with Mrs. Rodriguez holding my hand, and my 3 brothers huddled together in the corner, their faces a mask of sheer terror. "You're suffering from severe exhaustion and malnutrition," the doctor told me bluntly. "Your body is shutting down. When was the last time you had a full night of sleep, a proper, nutritious meal?" I couldn't answer because I honestly couldn't remember. "Elara," Liam said when we got home, his voice firm, the voice of a man, "this has to stop. You're killing yourself for us." "I'm fine," I insisted weakly, but we all knew I was lying. "No, you're not," Noah said, his usual humor completely gone. "And we can't lose you too." Caleb, now 15 and almost as tall as me, wrapped his strong arms around me. "We'll figure out another way, Elara. We'll all get jobs, but you have to take care of yourself too." That night, I finally had the breakdown that had been building for 4 years. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe, mourning not just my parents, but the life I had given up, the dreams I had sacrificed, the youth I had lost. My brothers held me while I cried, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I let them take care of me. "I'm scared," I admitted through my sobs. "I'm so scared I'm not enough. I'm scared I'm failing you." "Are you kidding me?" Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "Elara, you saved us. You have given us everything." "We're going to make it," Noah added, his hand on my shoulder. "All of us, together." "And someday," Caleb said, with the quiet wisdom of someone much older, "we're going to make sure that you never have to worry about money."
It was Noah who first suggested that something wasn't legally right about Dad's estate. He was 17 by then, taking an AP economics class, and had started asking pointed questions about probate court for a school project. "Elara," he said one evening as I was trying to figure out how to stretch our last $50 until payday, "I've been reading about probate court. When someone dies without a will in the state of Georgia, there are specific legal procedures that have to be followed. Public notices, court filings. I can't find any official record of Dad's estate ever going through probate." I looked up from the pile of bills. "What do you mean, Noah?" "I mean, if Uncle Marcus was really appointed as our legal guardian through the courts, there should be a public record of it. But there's nothing. It's like it never happened." Liam was listening intently, his jaw set in a grim, determined line. "He's right. What they did wasn't just immoral. It was illegal. It was fraud. But how? And why?" "Money," Noah said simply. "It's always about money." "But what money?" "According to our uncles, Dad had died broke. The house was mortgaged, there were debts, no insurance, no savings. What could they possibly have gained by destroying our lives?" I started digging deeper, using the research skills I'd learned from my 1.5 years at Georgia State before I had to drop out. I requested copies of the deed transfer for our old house, employment records for Dad, anything I could get my hands on. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Dad's house had been sold for $150,000 to a shell development company, a price that was at least 3 times less than what it was actually worth. The supposed debts that had necessitated the quick sale, I couldn't find a record of most of them. The few legitimate debts that had were small and manageable. But the biggest shock came when I contacted Dad's former employer. I had always known Dad worked in logistics for a large transportation company, but I had never understood exactly what he did. When I spoke to his former boss and best friend, a man named Mr. Thompson, I learned the truth. "Your father wasn't just an employee, Elara," Mr. Thompson told me over the phone, his voice heavy with sadness. "He was a partner. Richard was a genius. He developed a routing system that revolutionized our entire operation. We offered to buy him out when he got sick, but he refused. He said he wanted to leave his share to his children. His partnership stake. He owned 40% of Thompson Vance Logistics. Didn't anyone tell you?" When he passed away, his brothers came by with some lawyer, said they were handling his estate. They cashed out his shares, said it was to pay off his debts. The room spun around me. "How much," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "was his share worth at the time?" There was a pause.
At the time of his death, around $3 million. I hung up the phone and immediately called my brothers. When I told them what I had learned, the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. $3 million? Caleb finally whispered, his voice full of a child's disbelief. They stole $3 million from us, Liam said, his voice tight and low with a cold, controlled anger. And they threw us into poverty while they took everything, Noah added, his voice shaking with rage. But that wasn't all. Over the next few weeks, I discovered more and more pieces of the puzzle. Dad had indeed had a large life insurance policy. He had also had savings accounts, investment portfolios, even a small real estate portfolio I had never known about. Everything had been systematically liquidated immediately after his death, with Uncle Marcus signing the documents as the supposed executor of the estate. The total amount they had stolen from us was nearly $5 million. Finding honest legal help when you're poor is nearly impossible, but I was determined. I contacted every civil rights organization, every legal aid society, every pro bono program I could find. Most of them turned me away. The case was too complex, too expensive, too old. Finally, I found Sarah Chen, a brilliant, passionate young lawyer who had just started her own practice and was looking to make a name for herself. She was willing to take our case on contingency. This is one of the most elaborate and cruel estate frauds I have ever seen, she told me after reviewing the mountain of evidence I had gathered. But we need more proof. We need to find the real will. That's when she suggested we investigate Mr. Harrison, the lawyer who had supposedly handled Dad's estate. What we discovered was that Mr. Harrison had been disbarred 2 years after Dad's death for a string of financial misconduct cases. She tracked him down to a small, dusty town outside Augusta where he was working as a used car salesman and drinking away his guilt. At first, he refused to talk to us, but when Sarah threatened to expose his role in our fraud, he finally blessedly broke down. "They paid me $50,000, he sobbed, a pathetic, broken man. $50,000 to destroy some documents and forge others. I was deep in debt, about to lose my practice anyway. They said it was just paperwork, that the kids would be better off with proper guardians." "What documents did you destroy?" Sarah demanded, her voice like ice. "The will," he confessed, "Richard's real will, and the trust documents. There was a trust, a huge one set up for the children, but it had conditions. The boys had to graduate high school, and the girl, Elara, had to turn 25 before any of the principal could be accessed." My heart stopped. "How much," I asked, my voice shaking, "was his trust worth at the time?" Mr. Harrison looked at me with haunted, guilt-ridden eyes. "When I destroyed the documents, it was worth about $70 million. With compound interest over the last 6 years, it's probably worth over $100 million now." $100 million? Sarah breathed. "Where is it now?" "It's still there, still growing. The bank that holds the trust has no idea the will was destroyed. As far as they know, they're still waiting for the conditions of the trust to be met." Armed with Mr. Harrison's sworn confession and a mountain of irrefutable evidence, Sarah filed a lawsuit that immediately made the local news. Local family discovers they are the secret heirs to a $100 million fortune after years of unimaginable poverty, the headline read. Within days of the story breaking, my phone was ringing off the hook. Uncle Marcus, Uncle David, Aunt Clara, they all wanted to talk. They were deeply concerned about the terrible misunderstanding. They wanted to work something out. I refused to speak to any of them without Sarah present. The first family meeting in 6 years took place in Sarah's sterile conference room. Uncle Marcus walked in, looking older and far more desperate than I remembered. Aunt Clara was a nervous wreck, fidgeting with her expensive purse and avoiding eye contact. Uncle David maintained his silent, dangerous demeanor. "Elara, honey," Uncle Marcus began, his voice oozing with a false sincerity that made my stomach churn, "I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Sarah interrupted, her voice as sharp as a razor, "is your clients thinking they could get away with this fraud indefinitely. We were trying to protect the children. Aunt Clara insisted, her voice high and shrill. Elara was too young, too inexperienced. Too young to have her own inheritance, too inexperienced to raise her own brothers. We can work this out. Uncle David spoke for the first time, his voice a low growl. Family doesn't need to air its dirty laundry in court. You stopped being our family the day you threw 4 orphan children onto the street, Liam said, his voice cold and steady. He had insisted on being present along with Noah and Caleb. They deserved to face the people who had stolen their childhoods. Uncle Marcus's mask of concern began to slip. You kids don't understand the complexities of these things. We understand theft, we understand fraud, and we understand that you watched us struggle and starve for 6 years while you lived off our money. That money would have been wasted on a 19-year-old girl. At least we invested it properly. Invested it in your lifestyle, you mean? Caleb said quietly. His voice had gotten deeper over the years, and there was a new hard steel in it now.
The mediation failed spectacularly within 2 hours. What followed was the most vicious, ugly legal battle I could have ever imagined. Uncle Marcus hired a team of expensive, ruthless lawyers who tried to claim I was an unfit guardian, that the boys would have been better off with them, that any supposed inheritance was tied up in legal complexities far beyond my understanding. They filed countersuits, claiming I was trying to extort them. They spread vicious rumors in our old neighborhood that I was making up stories for money. They even tried to get my brothers to testify against me, offering them new cars and full college tuition if they would just admit that they had been better off without me. Liam, Noah, and Caleb didn't even dignify their pathetic offers with a response. But my uncles weren't done. Uncle David, the quiet one, turned out to be the most dangerous. He started following me, showing up at my jobs, making veiled threats about what happens to people who cause trouble for the family. One night, I came home from work to find my basement apartment had been broken into. Nothing of value was stolen, but my precious documents were scattered, my old computer was smashed, and a note was left on my pillow. Some secrets should stay buried. I called the police, but there was no proof of who had done it. Sarah advised me to be careful, to vary my routines, to never be alone if possible. The stress was overwhelming, but this time I wasn't facing it alone. My brothers, now grown men, rallied around me like a protective wall. Liam had just graduated high school and had gotten into Georgia Tech on a full academic scholarship. Noah had received a basketball scholarship to the University of Georgia, and Caleb was a senior with a full scholarship to attend the prestigious Berklee College of Music in Boston. They could have easily walked away, started their new, bright lives, and left the ugly legal battle behind. Instead, they stood firmly with me. You sacrificed everything for us, Elara, Liam told me, his hand on my shoulder. Now it's our turn to protect you. The trial began on a cold, gray February morning. The courthouse was packed with reporters, curious family members, and onlookers who had followed the sensational story in the news. I sat at the plaintiff's table wearing a simple but elegant suit that Sarah had helped me pick out, with my 3 brothers sitting directly behind me in the front row, a silent, powerful show of solidarity. Across the aisle, my uncles and Aunt Clara sat with their high-powered legal team, looking confident and utterly entitled. Sarah's opening statement was devastating. She laid out the entire timeline of their calculated fraud with a cold, surgical precision, using bank records, forged documents, and witness testimony to paint a damning picture of calculated greed and unimaginable family betrayal. The defendants, she concluded, her voice ringing through the silent courtroom, didn't just steal money. They stole childhoods. They condemned 4 orphaned children to years of poverty, fear, and struggle while they lived a life of comfort and luxury off the victim's inheritance. The defense tried to claim that they had acted in good faith, that the legal situation had been complex, that they had genuinely believed they were protecting the children's best interests. But then Sarah called Mr. Harrison to the stand. The disgraced lawyer was clearly a nervous wreck, sweating profusely despite the cool courtroom air.
Under oath, he detailed exactly how he had been paid $50,000 to destroy my father's real will and forge the documents that had made it appear Dad had died without an estate plan. "They told me it was for the children's own good," he testified, his voice trembling. "But I knew I was committing fraud. I have regretted it every single day since." When Sarah asked him to identify the people who had paid him, he pointed a shaky finger directly at Uncle Marcus and Uncle David. The defense's cross-examination was brutal, but Mr. Harrison, perhaps seeing a chance at some small redemption, held firmly to his story. The damage was done. Over the next week, Sarah systematically dismantled and destroyed my uncle's claims. She called my dad's former business partner, who testified about the $3 million partnership stake that had been fraudulently claimed. She presented bank records showing how our stolen money had been divided among the three couples and spent on new houses, luxury cars, exotic vacations, and risky investments. She showed the jury photographs of our damp, dark basement apartment starkly contrasted with pictures of my uncle's new sprawling homes. She presented my work records, showing the jury how I had worked 3 grueling jobs for years to keep us afloat, while they had lived a life of leisure. But the most powerful and moving testimony came from my brothers. Liam took the stand first. He was composed and articulate, and he calmly described our years of struggle, the immense sacrifices I had made, and the way I had held our fragile family together through sheer force of will. My sister was 19 years old when she became responsible for 3 grieving, traumatized boys. She could have given up. She could have let the state take us. Instead, she gave up her own dreams, her own future, to make sure that we had a chance at ours. Noah was next, and he brought his natural charisma to bear on the jury. He made them laugh with stories of our pancake Sundays and our indoor camping adventures, and then he made them angry as he described watching me work myself to the point of collapse. I used to wonder why God had let our parents die. But I think I know now. He knew we needed Elara to raise us. He knew that she would love us enough to sacrifice everything for us. Caleb's testimony was the most emotional. By now 21 and preparing for his promising music career, he spoke with the poised confidence of a seasoned performer, but his voice broke when he talked about our darkest struggles. He said, "There were nights I would hear her crying in her room. She thought we were asleep, but I heard her. She cried because she was tired, because she was scared, because she didn't know how she was going to pay the rent. But the next morning, she would get up and make us breakfast and tell us that everything was going to be okay. And because she believed it, or at least pretended to, we believed it too." When the defense attorney tried to suggest that the boys might have been better off with proper adult supervision, Caleb's response silenced the entire courtroom. He said, "Elara didn't just supervise us. She loved us. She sacrificed her youth, her education, her social life, her health, everything to make sure that we had what we needed. What we needed wasn't money or a big house. What we needed was someone who would never, ever give up on us, someone who would keep every single promise she made. And that's what Elara gave us." The defense's case fell apart quickly and spectacularly after that. They tried to argue that they had acted with good intentions, but the overwhelming evidence of their lavish spending while we lived in abject poverty made their claim seem hollow and insulting. Uncle Marcus took the stand in his own defense, maintaining his arrogant lie that he had genuinely believed he was protecting us. But under Sarah's relentless cross-examination, his story unraveled. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice like ice, "you testify that you were deeply concerned about Elara's ability to provide for the boys. Were you also concerned about her ability to access a $100 million trust fund?" We didn't know about any trust fund. "But you destroyed the will that established that trust fund, didn't you?" "No, never. You paid Mr. Harrison $50,000 to destroy a set of legal documents. Are you telling this court under oath that you had no idea what those documents contained?" The longer he was on the stand, the more his lies became tangled and transparent. By the time Sarah was finished with him, it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that he knew exactly what he was doing from the very beginning. And Clara was next, and she broke down completely under questioning. She admitted everything, that they had known about Dad's assets, that they had deliberately hidden them from us, and that they had spent years living off money that rightfully belonged to orphaned children. Uncle David refused to testify, invoking his Fifth Amendment right, a move that Sarah used to devastating effect in her closing argument. David Vance won't take the stand because he knows there is no excuse for what they did. There is no justification for stealing from children. There is no defense for condemning 4 orphans to a life of poverty while you live in luxury off their inheritance. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and delivered the verdict that would change our lives forever. In the matter of Vance versus Vance, we find for the plaintiffs on all counts.
The judge's ruling was even more satisfying. Not only did he order the immediate release of the trust fund to our control, but he also imposed massive additional damages for pain and suffering, legal fees and punitive damages, specifically designed to punish the defendants for their particularly egregious and cruel conduct. But the real, true victory came when the judge read aloud a letter that had been found in Dad's safety deposit box, a letter he had written to us, to be opened only if something happened to him. "My dearest children," the judge read, his own voice thick with emotion. "If you are hearing this, then I am no longer with you, and for that, I am so deeply sorry. I want you to know that everything I worked for, everything I built was for you. The trust I have established will ensure that you never want for anything. But more importantly, I pray that you will always have each other. Elara, my brave, strong girl, I know the responsibility of this family will fall on your young shoulders. You are stronger than you know, and I trust you completely to keep our family together. Take care of your brothers, my love, but please do not forget to take care of yourself, too. Liam, you have my sense of responsibility and your mother's deep wisdom. Use both to help guide your family. Noah, you have the incredible gift of joy. Never ever lose your laughter. Even in the darkest of times, your family will need your light. And Caleb, you have your mother's gentle, artistic heart and my own quiet determination. Follow your dreams, my son, but never forget where you come from. I have left you enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. But more than that, I have tried to give you the values that will make you good people. Love each other. Support each other. Forgive each other's mistakes. Be the family I always dreamed you would be. All my love, always, Dad." There wasn't a single dry eye in the entire courtroom. The legal victory was just the beginning of the justice we received. Over the next year, karma, it seemed, caught up with each of our tormentors in ways that were both satisfying and deeply sobering. Uncle Marcus lost his high-paying job when his employer learned of the details of the fraud case. His wife left him, taking their daughter and half of their remaining assets in a bitter divorce. The beautiful house he had bought with our stolen money went into foreclosure, and he was forced to move into a small, sad apartment, a bitter and lonely man. Aunt Clara developed severe anxiety and depression, unable to cope with the public shame and the legal consequences of her actions. She lost most of her high society friends and found herself completely isolated. Uncle David faced separate criminal charges for fraud and intimidation. He was sentenced to 5 years in a state prison, where his quiet, dangerous demeanor made him no friends. The man who had thought he could intimidate a young woman to silence found himself utterly powerless behind bars. And Sophia, my cousin, lost her teaching job when the school district learned about her family's crimes. Her husband left her, disgusted by her willing participation in the theft from orphaned children. She was forced to move back in with her disgraced father, two bitter, resentful people feeding off each other's misery. But perhaps the most poetic justice of all came when the IRS launched a full-scale investigation into their years of unreported income. The money they had stolen and spent so freely became a tax nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. I didn't celebrate their downfall, but I won't lie, there was a deep, quiet satisfaction in watching the people who had tried so desperately to destroy us finally face the consequences of their own choices. The trust fund, now worth a staggering $127 million with accumulated interest, was released to us in stages. As the oldest, I received immediate access to enough of the funds to secure our futures, with the rest held in trust until my brothers each reached the age of 25. The very first thing I did was buy us a house. Not a mansion, but a beautiful, warm, 4-bedroom home in a good neighborhood with a big open kitchen and a sprawling backyard where we could finally, truly breathe. After 7 long years in that dark, damp basement apartment, simply having space and light felt like a miracle. Liam transferred to a better university to finish his engineering degree. Noah was able to focus completely on his basketball career without having to worry about money. And Caleb continued his music studies, now able to afford the very best teachers and equipment. But money, as we soon learned, couldn't erase the deep-seated habits of survival we had all developed. For months, we all hoarded food, kept our lights on all night, and obsessively checked our bank account balances. It took a long, long time to truly believe that our security was real. The media attention was overwhelming at first. Everyone wanted to interview the Cinderella family, as one newspaper had dubbed us. We were invited on talk shows, offered lucrative book deals, and were even approached by movie producers. We turned most of it down. Our story belonged to us, and we weren't ready to share it with the world yet. With our newfound financial security came the freedom to pursue our dreams without the constant grinding desperation that had driven us for so long. Liam graduated summa cum laude with degrees in both engineering and business. He started his own successful consulting firm specializing in logistics and supply chain management, carrying on Dad's legacy in a way that would have made him immensely proud. By the time he was 26, his company had offices in 3 states. Noah finished college and was drafted by a professional basketball team, but a severe knee injury ended his playing career early. Instead of being devastated, he channeled his passion and energy into coaching and sports management. He started a nonprofit youth basketball program in inner-city Atlanta, giving underprivileged kids the same kinds of opportunities he had only dreamed of during our hardest years. And Caleb's music career took off like a rocket. His first album, which he titled Basement Dreams, was a poignant, beautiful tribute to our journey, and it became a massive critical and commercial success. He won 3 Grammy Awards before his 25th birthday, and has used his powerful platform ever since to advocate for foster children and families living in poverty. As for me, I discovered I had a natural talent for business and investment, a skill I never knew I possessed. I started small, buying and renovating properties in struggling neighborhoods, and then expanded into restaurants, retail, and technology startups. By the time I was 30, I had built my own business empire, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But our greatest, most profound success was that we stayed together. Through everything, the money, the fame, the endless opportunities that could have so easily pulled us in different directions, we remained a family. When Liam got married at 28, he asked me to walk him down the aisle. He said, "You've been more than just a sister to me, Elara. You've been our mother, our father, our protector. You gave up everything to raise us. Let me honor that today." I cried through the entire beautiful ceremony, watching my little brother marry a wonderful woman who understood and respected our unusual, unbreakable family dynamic.
Noah's wedding 2 years later was a joyous celebration that would have made our dad so proud. He married his college sweetheart in a ceremony that filled an entire church with laughter and pure, unadulterated joy. When he thanked me in his wedding speech, calling me the best mother a man could ever ask for, there wasn't a single dry eye in the entire house. And Caleb's wedding was perhaps the most beautiful of all, a true musical celebration where he serenaded his bride with a song he had written about finding love after so much loss. I walked him down the aisle too, my baby brother, now a successful, world-renowned musician who still called me every week when he needed advice. At each of their weddings, my brothers publicly and without reservation thanked me for the sacrifices I had made, for the promises I had kept, and for the fierce, unwavering love that had held our family together through the darkest of times.
For years, I was so focused on my brothers and on building our new life that I didn't even think about romance. I had convinced myself that I was too busy, too independent, too set in my ways to ever need anyone else. And then I met Daniel. He was a brilliant architect working on one of my commercial properties, and he had absolutely no idea who I was when we first met. To him, I was just another client, and I loved the simple, wonderful normality of that. He was kind, funny, hardworking, and completely unimpressed by wealth or status. Our first date was to a small, unassuming diner, not unlike Sonny's Kitchen, where I had once worked. When I told him how much I loved the simplicity of it, he laughed and said, "Good, because I'm not trying to impress you with my money. I'm trying to impress you with my sparkling personality." And he did impress me, with his integrity, his passion for his work, and his genuine, deep interest in who I was as a person, not what I had accomplished or accumulated. When I finally told him my full story, he listened without a hint of judgment or pity. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," he said simply when I had finished, "and the most loving. Your brothers are so lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one to have them," I corrected. He smiled and said, "You are all lucky to have each other. That is what a real family looks like." We married in a small, beautiful ceremony, with my brothers as my wedding party, and Mrs. Rodriguez, our old landlord who had become like a true grandmother to us, giving me away. It was perfect in its simplicity. Daniel and I had 3 children, twin girls whom we named Grace and Hope, and a son whom we named Richard, after my father. My brother's children all call me Aunt Elara, but they also know the story of how I raised their fathers. They understand that our family is built on a foundation of sacrifice, love, and unbreakable bonds. Every Sunday, we still have pancake mornings. Now it's in my spacious, sun-filled kitchen, with 3 families gathered around a massive table that seats 20. The children laugh at the stories of their fathers eating ramen noodles for weeks at a time, and we make sure they understand how incredibly blessed they are. But we also make sure they understand the value of hard work, of taking care of each other, of keeping your promises, even when it's the hardest thing in the world to do. Liam's daughter, Eleanor, named after my mother, is now studying to be a teacher. Noah's son Marcus plays basketball just like his father, but wants to be a doctor. And Caleb's twin boys are as musically gifted as their father, but are grounded in the values we taught them. They are the 4th generation of Vance children, raised with the love and security we never had. But they know their family's story. They know that their comfortable, happy lives were built on the sacrifices of a 19-year-old girl who simply refused to let her family be broken. Our success gave us the resources to help others, and we have never, ever forgotten where we came from. Together, my brothers and I established the Richard Vance Foundation, not as an end to our story, but as a living, breathing tribute to our father and the values he instilled in us. The foundation provides emergency financial assistance to families facing sudden hardship, full scholarships for students who are aging out of the foster care system, and crucial support for siblings who are trying to stay together within that system.
We have helped hundreds of families avoid the kind of separation and soul-crushing poverty we experienced. Every grant we approve, every family we help stay together feels like a victory against the dark forces that once tried to break us. I also started a personal mentorship program for young women who, through tragedy, find themselves responsible for their siblings or other family members. I teach them practical, real-world skills: how to budget, how to navigate complex legal systems, how to find and access resources. But more importantly, I try to give them the one thing I wish I had had all those years ago: someone who understood the immense weight they were carrying. You are not alone, I tell each and every young woman I meet. What you are doing is incredibly hard, but it is also heroic, and you are so much stronger than you know. Now at 32, I look back on our incredible journey with a mixture of deep pain and immense pride. The years of struggle were brutal, but they forged us into the people we might never have become otherwise. Liam is one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the Southeast, but he is also humble, generous, and completely devoted to his family. The immense responsibility he shouldered as a teenager taught him how to lead with both strength and compassion. Noah's natural charisma could have easily made him arrogant, but his years of making light of our terrible hardships taught him how to use his humor to heal rather than to harm. He has become a true leader in youth sports, changing countless lives through basketball and mentorship. And Caleb's profound artistic gifts were refined by his suffering into something truly transcendent. His music speaks to people who have known loss and struggle, offering them hope and healing in equal measure. As for me, I learned that love is the single strongest, most resilient force in the universe. Love made me work 3 jobs without a single complaint. Love gave me the strength to fight for what was right, even when I was terrified. Love held our family together when everything else in our world fell apart. The money we eventually received was life-changing, but it wasn't what saved us. We saved each other. Last year, on the 10th anniversary of winning our court case, I received an unexpected letter. It was from my Uncle Marcus, written from the small, sad apartment where he now lives alone. Elara, I know I have no right to contact you, and I certainly do not expect your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I think about what we did to you and your brothers every single day. We were jealous of your father's success, deeply resentful that he seemed to have everything while we struggled. When he died, we saw an opportunity to take what we foolishly felt he owed us. We told ourselves that we were protecting you children from making mistakes with money you were too young to handle. But the truth is, we were just greedy, bitter, and cruel. We justified stealing from orphans because we wanted what your father had built. Watching what you became, how you raised those boys, the incredible success you have all achieved, it has made me realize what a monster I was. You were a better parent at 19 than I ever was as an adult. Your father would be so proud of the woman you became and the men you raised. I do not ask for your forgiveness because I do not deserve it. I just wanted you to know that justice was served and it was right. You deserved better from your family. And I am so deeply sorry that we failed you so completely. Your Uncle Marcus. I showed the letter to my brothers, and we talked about it for hours. There was still anger there, of course, but there was also something like pity. Marcus had destroyed his own life through his greed and jealousy, losing everything that truly mattered, while we had gained everything that counted. I wrote him back, not to forgive him, but to finally close the circle. Uncle Marcus, I appreciate your honesty. What you did to us was unforgivable, but I have learned that carrying anger only hurts the person who is holding it. I do not forgive you for what you took from us, but I do not hate you anymore either. You were wrong about one thing, though. My father didn't owe you or anyone else his success. He earned it through his own hard work and sacrifice. The only thing any of us truly owe each other in this life is basic human decency, and you failed that test completely. But your letter tells me that you finally understand that now. I hope you find some peace in whatever years you have left. Elara. I never heard from him again. Today, I sit in my beautiful office overlooking downtown Chicago, watching the vibrant, bustling city below. My companies employ over 1,000 people. My brothers have built their own successful, inspiring enterprises. Our children are happy and healthy, growing up with advantages we never had, but also with the deep, unshakable values we learned in that dark, damp basement apartment. People often ask me if I regret the years of struggle, if I wish that things had been different. The honest answer is complicated. I regret that my brothers had to see their sister work herself to the point of collapse. I regret that we all missed out on the normal, carefree experiences of being teenagers. I regret the constant stress, the fear, the long, dark nights when I lay awake wondering if I was failing them. But I do not regret becoming the person that those struggles made me. I do not regret the unbreakable, sacred bond that those hardships forged between my brothers and I do not regret learning that we could survive anything as long as we had each other. The money was nice to get, but it was not what made us rich. We were rich the moment we decided to face our challenges together. We were rich every Sunday morning when we gathered for pancakes. We were rich in the fierce, unwavering love that held us together through everything.
Yesterday, Caleb called me from Los Angeles, where he was recording his 5th album. "Elara," he said, his voice full of a warmth that brought tears to my eyes. "I was in the studio, thinking about those old days, and I realized something. Do you remember what you told us that last night in our old house? You said that we were going to be okay, that you would take care of us no matter what." "I remember," I said, my voice thick. "You kept that promise, Elara. Every single part of it. Even when it seemed impossible, even when you were breaking under the weight of it all, you kept us safe. You kept us together. You kept us okay." "We kept each other okay," I corrected gently. "Maybe," he said, "but it started with you. It started with a 19-year-old girl who refused to let her family be broken. And look at us now. We're all successful. We're all happy. We all have families of our own. But more than that, we are still brothers and sister. We still love each other. We are still okay." After we hung up, I thought about Dad's letter, the one the judge had read in court all those years ago. He had asked me to keep our family together, and I had. He had asked me to take care of my brothers, and I had. But he had also asked me not to forget to take care of myself. And eventually, with their boundless love and support, I had learned to do that too. The girl who had made those promises in an empty living room, surrounded by boxes and uncertainty, had had no idea what the future held. She could never have imagined the wealth, the success, or the deep, profound happiness that waited for her on the other side of all that struggle. But she had known one thing, with an absolute, unshakable certainty. She would never break a promise to the people she loved. And she never did. This is my story. Our story. It is a story of love triumphing over greed, of a family bond that proved stronger than any force that tried to break it, and of promises kept against impossible odds. It is the story of 4 orphaned children who refused to be destroyed by the very people who should have protected them. We didn't just survive, we thrived. And every single day we wake up grateful for the journey that brought us here, even the dark, painful parts, because they taught us who we really are.
We are the Vance family. We are unbreakable. And we are living proof that in the end, love always wins. This story is dedicated to every young person who has had to grow up too fast, to every family that has chosen love over bitterness, and to everyone who believes that our greatest inheritance is not what we receive, but what we give to the next generation.